All right, I think that's recording now. So welcome everyone to the Flight School Hunting 101. My name's Gabriel Dayn, and I'm primarily a hunter for blops fleets and things like that. So first of all, I just wanted to get an idea of what your guys' experiences with hunting so far is. So if you can just in Fleet Chat put an X if you have done any hunting at all so far.
Does being hunted count?
No, not for this one, unfortunately. Okay, there's quite a few. And maybe give me an N if this is like your first month in EVE Online. Excellent, that's what I want to see. Fantastic. That's great. So yeah, like I was saying before I started recording, hunting is something that you can do straight away as you start playing the game, and it's one of the most active things and also the most useful things for your improvement as a pilot personally that you can do, I think. So I'm really glad to have you guys on. Now, just before we get started onto the content, I'm going to go over what the topics that we're going to be covering are, and this will be covered in the slides hopefully as well. The first thing that we're going to talk about is what happens before you undock. So all the things that you have to get ready before you actually head out to hunt, and that is, first of all, the reason, right? So why be a hunter to begin with? Why step up for that role, as well as any ships and fits that you might need. We'll go over skills requirements as well, and finally kind of out of game requirements that you'll need tools and things like that to be an effective hunter. After that, we're going to go over how to select your hunting grounds. So this is essentially finding a region of space perhaps, or specific raiding pockets where you think that there's going to be crabbers active at the time, whether that's raiding or mining, doesn't really matter. After that, we are going to get into the position where you've landed in your system, you've jumped the gate, you've ran your D-scan, and there's a target there, and what do you do next? So how do you land on your target? And I think that for most people, that's going to be the most crucial part of this class, because and I'm sure this has happened to all of you, no matter how new you are. We've all been in the situation where, we de-scan someone down, we find their anomaly, we warp, and we land as they're warping out, and there's nothing more frustrating than that. So being as quick and effective in that, like 30-second to 1 minute period as we jump into a system, we're going to cover a lot of time on that. We're going to be very friendly with D-scan and with combat probing by the end of the lesson, hopefully. After that, we're going to go into some specifics about some specialized roles. So blops hunting and covert signers. We're getting more and more content of this kind in Horde, which is great to see. And covert sino pilots are well sought after, so we'll cover some of that. And finally, we'll look at some tricks, tips, and some traps that you can set as well. Things that you're not going to use every time that you go out hunting, but that can give you that extra 1% edge to land on some really tricky targets. Things like how to set up drag bubbles, stop bubbles, hunting DED. Radders, carriers with posses and things like that, as well as some other tips like how to avoid bait and whatnot. So I think that pretty much covers all the topics that we're going to be covering today. Are there any questions about that, or anything that you're not hearing in that you want to add to the end of the lesson? Excellent. Okay. And also let me know in Fleet Chat if there's anything that you want me to cover, or if you have any questions. I'm not going to be able to read Fleet Chat the whole time, so if someone that is reading it can just speak up and interrupt me if there's a question I've ignored, just let me know. So I'm going to get right into it. Why be a hunter? I think hunting is one of the my favorite things that I do in Eve, and I tried to really have a think about why that is while I was putting together this class, and I think it boils down to three things. The first one is that hunting provides content. In Eve, content is everything, right? It's if we don't have people actively looking out for things to do, for opportunities for PvP, for juicy targets, for that, that opportunity to get the shakes, which is the reason that we all play the game, then Eve becomes just ship spinner online, and no one wants that to happen. And I think I want to believe that everyone that's in Horde is here because you want to be that content provider. You want to learn how to if not lead the fleets, then at least how to do the roles that step up to make those fleets happen. Hunting, scouting, interdictor pilots, they're what makes Horde tick, and we need you in every fleet. The second reason that I love hunting is that it makes you a better pilot. All the skills that go into hunting are transferable to, I think, every other role in Eve, and they're going to make you a better pilot no matter whether you do it just once or whether this is everything that you do in Eve. Things like how to use D-scan, how to combat probe, but also how to communicate quickly, concisely, how to relay intel, how to give directions to fleet with confidence and with purpose. Those are all things that you're going to use every day in Eve, no matter what you're doing. It also makes you, it also forces you to make decisions really confidently, quickly, under pressure. And these are skills that, again, in any PvP situation are going to come in handy. And more importantly, they're not things that I can teach you. They're things that you only get with practice. And hunting is a great kind of low risk way to get some practice there. And I think the last reason, and the most important, is that it's incredibly fun. It's if you've ever been in a PvP fleet and got bored, if you're not enjoying being an F1 monkey or whatever, hunting is for you. There is not a second in a fleet that you're going to be bored in if you're a hunter. You're going to be the most active person. There's always going to be things to do, and you're going to be grappling with 20 things at once, which if you're someone like me, then that's where you log in to play. So that's why hunt. Any questions on that? Any comments? Anything at all? Excellent. So that's the motivation, right? One of the things that you need before you undock is the motivation to hunt, and I think that those three reasons are plenty motivation to do so. The next thing is you need a ship. Very basic, and there's quite a few ships that you can hunt in. If you're a day one character, you can hunt in a tier 1 frigate just fine. All that you need essentially is a warp disruptor or a warp scrambler, a micro warp drive, and that's it. But soon after that, you'll want to specialize into hunting ships, and the easiest ones to get into are interceptors and stealth bombers. Now, I'm going to go over a few of the different hunting ships that we use and some of the pros and cons. Feel free to interrupt with each one if you have specific questions about each ship. And then after the class, there'll be fits and things like that I can share with you as well. So probably the first ship that you'll get into that has a hunting role after a tackle frigate is an interceptor. Now, the pros for an interceptor is that it's got the fastest line and warp speed of essentially any ship. It's also nullified, which means that bubbles don't stop it from warp, and it doesn't get dragged into bubbles, which means that you can move between systems that much easier. It's relatively low in SP requirements. You just need Evasive Maneuvers 5 and Racial Frigate 5, which I think both are either 1 or 2x skills. And they're also relatively cheap, depending on your income and things like that. But you can get a good interceptor for 30, 35, 40 mil ISK. The downsides of an interceptor is firstly, they're unable to hunt for Blops fleets. So if that's something that you're into, you just can't do it. Only ships with covert ops cloaks can fit a covert sonar. And also they require quite high manual piloting skills. not necessarily to land the tackle. It's quite easy to land it in an interceptor, but the manual piloting that you need in order to stay on the target and not die really quickly is high because of how squishy you are. So that's interceptors. Any questions about interceptors in particular as a hunting ship?
Could you
Caver
maybe
makes
post some example fits?
Yeah, I am gonna do that. Let me just bring it up. In the meantime, Caver makes a good point, which is that you can use an interceptor as a normal Sino ship. So if you were really ghettoing a Blobs fleet, you could just use that, and you just have to consider it a disposable tackler, essentially. You want to essentially land tackle, Sino up, things land on you, and then you die. No matter what happens, you're going to die. You can also use it for, obviously, hunting with caps, but we're not really going to cover that in this class. So let me just get a fit for you guys to look at. Feel free to make any comments or questions in the meantime. It's going to take 1 second.
What exactly is a Sino?
Good question. So a Sino is a module that you fit into your high slots, and essentially it works like think of it like a beacon, right? So any ship that has a jump drive that is in your fleet can immediately jump to that beacon as long as it's within range and it has fuel. You can also use it to bridge other ships, and we'll cover how that works in the context of Blobs fleets a bit later. For an interceptor, though, don't worry too much about it. You're not going to be using it as a Sino ship. It's mostly there to be primary tackle and to hold tackle as long as it's needed for your fleet to get to you. So as you can see in that malediction that I just shared, what are some key elements of hunting interceptors? First of all, disruptor and scrambler. Both are really important. The disruptor you're going to want because you're not always going to land close to your target, right? You could be landing by warping straight to an anomaly, maybe at range, and Ishtars, VNIs, rattlesnakes, carriers as well, they'll be not at 0 on the anomaly every single time, so you might need to burn towards your target, and having that long point is invaluable to be able to keep them on grid. You do want the scrambler as well, though, and the reason for that is, first of all, it shuts down the micro warp drive, so they can't run away from you if that's something that they might want to do. But secondarily, for any battleship that you land on, they have the ability to micro jump drive out, which is a module that transports you 100 kilometers away from where you are in the direction that you're aligning, and the only thing that can stop that is a warp scrambler. So if you manage to land a scram on the battleship that you're tackling, you ensure that they can't run away by using that module.
When people talk about a long point and a short point, is that what the difference between a disruptor and a scrambler is?
Correct, yeah. So if you right-click and show info on the warp disruptor, you'll see that in the attributes tab, the optimal range is 24 kilometers, right? So that's your long point. If you do the same thing with the warp scrambler, you'll see that it has an optimal range of 9,000 meters, so 9 kilometers. That is a lot less and therefore a short point. But the upsides of a warp scrambler is that if you go to the warp scramble strength, it's double the one of the warp disruptor. So if you're tackling something that has warp core stabs in the lows, which increase their warp core strength, you can keep them tackled, right? Also, warp scramblers turn off micro warp drives and micro jump drives, which means that it's easier to hold things down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Is there any one particular racial interceptor that's better than the rest?
I don't think so. You can definitely hunt with every single racial interceptor, although there are 2 interceptors per race, and that's something that I should probably mention. So if you look at, for example, Amar Frigate 5, you'll notice that there is a Malediction, which is an interceptor, and a Crusader, which is also an interceptor. Let me link them in Fleet for you guys. If you show info on the Malediction, you'll see that it has bonuses to Warp Scrambler and Warp Disruptor range, as well as Micro Warp Drive signature radius penalty, as in you get less of a signature radius bloom by running your Micro Warp Drive, and it has some minor bonuses to Rocket Launcher Fire, and the Armor Resists are also handy. If you, on the other hand, look at the traits for the Crusader, you'll see that it has damage and gun-related bonuses more than anything. So it tracks better, it has more damage, and it uses less capacitor to run your small energy turrets. But there are no bonuses towards tackle, right? So this is the case with every race. You'll have one interceptor, which is a tackle, primarily a tackle interceptor, and the other one is primarily a kind of damage focused interceptor. So for example, for Minmatar, the stiletto is tackle and the claw is damage. So you'll want to use the tackle one in every case. But they're all good, all the races. Any other questions about interceptors specifically as hunting ships?
Just to make that clear, is it possible to micro jump drive out of a bubble?
Yes, you can, yeah. So bubbles do not prevent you from micro jump driving out. And also, I should clarify that there is a difference between a micro jump drive and a micro jump field generator, I think it's called, which is what is commonly known as a boosh, right? And that's the command destroyer only module, which allows you to transport not just your own ship 100k away, but every ship other than Capital's 6k around you. Warp Scramblers also stop those modules, but those are not the ones that battleships fit, and not the reason that we have it in the Malediction in this case. Yeah, there you go. Micro jump field generator, that's the one. Any other questions about inties while we're at it? Okay, so just another 2 things that I'll comment on the fit is you'll see that it has an overdrive injector system which increases the speed. This makes it easier to burn towards a target if you land at range. It also has a small ionic field projector which allows you to target them ahead of time and land that long point at max range. It has a small polycarbon engine housing, which also increases speed. And other than that, it's basically tank. So small and serially armor repairer, damage control, keep you alive. And then the energy Nosferatu are there to keep your cap up. Because these fits are not going to be cap stable essentially ever. So you need those Nosferatu to be able to hold tackle on something if your fleet is maybe a few jumps away and it's going to take them a couple of minutes to get to you. And obviously the 5mm micro warp drive is absolutely necessary to be able to burn to your target. Okay, so that is Inties. The next ship that is very commonly used as a hunter, especially starting out, is the stealth bomber. Now, I should probably explain before I go over the stealth bomber what a BLOPS is. Now, BLOPS stands for Black Ops, and it refers to Black Ops battleships. So the Panther, the Widow, the Sin, and the Redeemer. Now, what's special about these ships is that they have they're able to fit a jump bridge module, which means that not only can they themselves jump to a Sino lit by another ship or a Sino beacon, but they can bridge other ships through it as well. In the case of the blobs, they're limited to bridging ships that are able to fit a covert ops cloak. So a blobs fleet refers to either just a bunch of blobs battleships fit for damage, which jump into a Sino and kill the target, or a blobs battleship that bridges a bunch of other cloaked ships, which could be bombers, could be Stratiuses, could be a bunch of other things. But the key here is that in order to be able to jump to that target, you need to have a Sino fit, and this is why we're talking about stealth bombers in this case. So are there any questions about what blobs are or how that works? I won't go into too much detail, but is anyone confused about it at the moment?
Sorry, did you say you need a Sino fit to jump to a Sino?
You don't need to have a Sino fit into the blobs. You need to have a Sino lit in fleet. So the hunter will have the Sino. Yeah. So the hunter will have the Sino. They'll land tackle on something, light the Sino, and then the blobs opens the bridge to that Sino. Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit unclear how I said it.
No, I heard fit instead of lit.
All right.
Another thing that I had some weeks ago when I was dropped in Mallorca, there was only one mutant system. So is someone able to light a Sino and simultaneously get the tackle on me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically,
that's
warp scramble me and light a Sino at the same time.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what you want to do. And that's what a hunter for a blobs fleet does. So look at, for example, the hunter that races 787 linked in fleet. You'll see that it has a warp disruptor, a warp scrambler, and the covert Sinosura field generator in the highs. So the idea with this fit and with all blobs hunters is you're the primary tackle, just like the Inti was before. But as soon as you land tackle and you're in range, you light that Sino, and the rest of the fleet just immediately jumps to you.
Okay.
So, some pros and cons of the stealth bomber as a hunter. To start with, they kind of the opposite of an Inti in many ways, in that they are incredibly slow to align, they're incredibly slow to warp, and you'll see that the fit has to actually counter that because of how slow these ships can be. So you have to fit hyperspatial velocity optimizers to increase the warp speed. It has inertial stabilizers to increase the align speed, but by their own nature, they're incredibly slow moving ships. So you need to be really, really quick on descanning and finding your targets to make up for that loss in speed. And also they're not nullified. So if there are any bubbles on gate, or if there are gate camps or anything like that, you're going to be slowed by them even further. They also are not survivable at all. You may survive a VNI if you tackle a VNI that maybe doesn't apply very well to you, or its drones were far away, or maybe if your target just panics and doesn't target you at all. But if you land on someone that is paying attention and that knows what they're doing, they're going to kill you every time essentially because you're super squishy. Also, another con of the stealth bomber is that it's very, very hard, or in some cases impossible, to fit combat probes because of just the fitting specs for the ships. They're not very ample, and so you have to make a lot of concessions to be able to fit probes, which cuts out an entire way of landing on a target. It just means that you have to be really good at descan. On the other hand, the pros of a stealth bomber is that they're relatively cheap, about the same cost of an interceptor. They have also low SP requirements, also along the same lines of an interceptor. And more than anything, the benefit of a stealth bomber is that it has no lock delay after a decloak. Now, what does this mean? If you show info on the covert op cloaking device and you go to the attributes, no, you have to show info on the Manticore itself. and look at the traits and the roll bonus, you'll see it has no targeting delay after cloaking device deactivation. Now, most ships cannot lock another ship for some period of time after decloaking, so after deactivating your cloaking device. The stealth bomber is the only class of ship for which that does not apply. That means that you can warp cloaked all the way to your target. You can even try to get closer to it by just slow boating while cloaked. Then you can decloak while in range and immediately point them. Whereas most other cloaky ships would have to wait a few seconds, which gives your target a chance to warp out potentially. So that is a crucial benefit of the stealth bomber if you're hunting for blobs. And let me quickly just go over the fit as well. So you've got the same warp disruptor, same warp scrambler for the same reasons, same 5MN micro warp drive for the same reasons as the Inti. You want to hold stuff down and get on range of them as quickly as possible. You have the inertial stabs to make up for the slower line. You have the hyperspecials to increase your warp speed, and this is all about making up for those downsides that the ship has, and trying to, again, land on your target as quickly as possible. And other than that, you have a tiny bit of tank in the medium shield extender, your cloak, and your Sino, which are both required. So they're very, very bare bones, but they can be super clutch. Any questions about stealth bombers at all?
3 questions relating to the covert Sino. Firstly, does it instantly open as you click it? Secondly, how long does it last? And thirdly, what happens if you get killed?
Good questions. So the first one was, does it instantly light? The answer is yes, with one caveat, which is that you can't light a Sino if you're going faster than 500 meters per second. So if you're micro warp driving towards your target and you try to light your Sino, it's not going to work. You have to slow down your ship to under 500 ms, and then you'll be able to light. The second one is what happens if you die? The Sino disappears. So if you get insta-blapped, no one's going to be able to jump to you anymore. And sorry, what was this middle question? The second question?
How long does it last, Gabe?
That
That depends on ship type.
Yeah, it lasts essentially a minute though. The only way to shorten that is to fly a force recon ship, which is probably a really bad ship to do blobs hunting in. So I'm not going to cover it. Any questions? I'm going to go over covert signers a bit later as well. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. So I get that Black Ops can lock onto a covert Sino. What about a regular Sino? Can they not lock onto those?
Yeah, they can, and there's just many reasons why you wouldn't want to use a normal Sino for blobs, but I'll cover those when we go over the more specific information about blobs a bit later.
All right.
But yeah, if you absolutely had to, you could use a regular Sino. Okay, I'm going to go over just one more ship type, just because this is what you guys should probably be aiming for as your, pipe dream hunter, and then we're going to go over the next things, which is skills and other requirements. But look, probably the best hunting ship that you can use, at least right now, before they potentially get nerfed to the ground, CC please don't, is the T3 cruiser. So these are very high SP requirement, quite expensive ships. You lose SP when you die in them, so they're really kind of high level ships to fly. And they also do have the 6-second lock delay after decloak, and they're also primarily known as hunting ships, so you're going to be reported on intel really, really quickly if you start flying these as a hunter. But on the other hand, they are essentially perfect for hunting. They can be fit, cloaky, and nullified. They're, I think, the only ship that can be cloaky, coverts, cloak, and nullified at the same time. They have excellent survivability. You can tank a carrier for a very long time in them. They're super versatile, so you can fit them however you want, depending on the situation, for nullsec or for lowsec, or for hunting carriers or for hunting subcabs. You can fit it specifically for that task. And they also have utility highs and mids that can help you kill your target. So you can add webs, you can add nudes, you can add a lot of things to them to aid in killing your target. So I'm not going to go over a fit for them because they're so variable, but definitely think of T3 cruisers as end game for a hunter, and I'll add some fits to the slides as well. Other than that, I'll mention a couple others that people use. So you can also hunt in a interdictor, for example. One of the great things about hunting in an interdictor is that you don't need to lock your target to tackle them. You can just bubble them. And they can be fit for really fast align and warp speed. Some of the cons is that they're not nullified, they're not able to warp cloaked, and they have really low survivability. Also, recons can be used for hunters, primarily for blops hunting, and also prospects and asteros, which are kind of the lowest P version of blops hunters. So any questions about any like those extra ships that you can use as hunters? Any questions about other ships that maybe you've used that you want to talk about?
Okay, I have another question about the modules. What about a web instead of a long point?
Yep, absolutely. So a web can be really, really useful. In my hunting Tegu, I always keep a web in my cargo hold just in case I need to refit. And it can be particularly useful for hunting 100 MN VNIs and Ishtars, and I guess Gilas use them as well, I'm not sure, because a warp scrambler is not going to turn off that prop mod. It only turns off micro orb drives, not afterburners, so that web is the only way to make sure that they're not burning out of your range. Any other questions about ship fittings, ship types, anything like that?
You mentioned you carry a web in your cargo.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fit that though, can you? Unless you use a mobile depot or whatever they call them.
Yeah, correct. So you in my ship, I always carry a mobile depot and I carry a few refits. So a web as well as a ship scanner and a few other things. And if the circumstances call for it, I will just warp to a safe away from a D-scan or in an empty system, refit, and then go back to hunting.
Can you drop a mobile depot just before you start combat, and can you access it during combat?
You can't refit while you have a weapons timer, and the mobile depots take 1 minute. I think it's 1 minute, maybe 2, to anchor. So you probably couldn't do that. Sorry, what was that?
Okay, thanks.
FC question in fleet chat. Do you have any non-OPSEC fits? Because I do not.
I do. Just give me 1 second. Feel free to ask questions while I copy this into game.
Okay, it takes 1 minute to land the depot.
1 minute, there you go. Any other comments? Anyone have a favorite hunting ship maybe that they want to share?
By the way, anchor time of mobile depots is 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so look, you would have to do it before you engage anything because of that timer as well, and the weapons timer would prevent you from refitting anyway. Alright, so here is a Tengu. This is not the hunter that I use anymore, but it works well enough, and it doesn't have all the items because you can't actually save some items in fittings such as mobile depots, which is a shame, but you can see it has everything that you could want. It's cloaky, it's nullified, it has scram, it has a web, it has amazing tank. You can get, I think with that fit it was like 2,500 DPS tank heated, which is great. It has probes, it has both sinos. You can have them online both at the same time, but it has both depending on what you're jumping in, if you ever needed to jump caps. It has energy neutralizers, it has everything. So they're amazing ships. Any questions about that one?
Local point and fleet that you are capable of using covops.
Sorry, what's that?
You can use the covop scanning frigs,
Oh,
with the
right.
buzzard
Yeah.
and whatnot for.
Yep. I can't see any reason why they wouldn't be good hunters. Except I don't think that they have the same bonus to no locking delay after decloak that the stealth bombers do.
That is correct.
Yeah. So it's essentially kind of like a prospect, which is fine. Yeah. Yeah, if you can't fly a stealth bomber, they'll do, I suppose. Also, okay, so another thing that I should mention is that sometimes the ideal ship for hunting is the non-threatening one. So a Cobops frig might not threaten a ratter. They might think that you're running explosides or whatever, and they might stay in space, whereas they might dock up if they, catch you on D-scan in a bomber. And that's a judgment call. You can't really predict how ratters will behave over time. So in some cases you'll want one, some cases you'll want the other, but you can't really plan for all of those situations. If I had to choose between a cover spree and a stealth bomber, I'd go a stealth bomber every time. All right, I might move on because it's taking a little bit longer than I expected. The other things that you want to do before you undock are not in-game. The first one is you want to work in microphone. You can't hunt without communicating with the rest of the fleet, so it's really important that you're able to be heard clearly and you're able to communicate quickly by using voice comms. The other thing that I'd say that you want is time. Hunting is not really something that you can rush. You can't, get on targets more quickly or whatever. It's something that takes time, and you should give yourself the time to do it properly. So don't go out hunting if you only have 20 minutes or whatever, or if it's half an hour before downtime and you really, really want to catch a ratter. Rushing yourself isn't going to make you more likely to get a kill. It's, if anything, going to make you make mistakes. So give yourself the time. And lastly, get help if you want it. So the first few times that you're out hunting in particular, it'll feel like you're just missing a lot of targets, and getting someone that's got a bit more experience in the fleet to ask questions to and help you around can be invaluable. But even if there's no one with more experience that can help you out, just having someone else in the fleet that is also hunting can take some pressure off you and can give you that little extra time to do things properly, to think it through, and to not put so much pressure on yourself. So I think if you're just starting out, have a couple of other hunters in the fleet. Don't be the only guy, because you'll feel, I think a lot of people feel bad if they don't provide content, when sometimes it's not your fault at all, and so you shouldn't put that pressure on yourself. Okay, so that's basically what you need before you undock or before you join fleet or whatever. Any comments about that? Any questions?
Yes, please. Go fit. You have. Let me just see where it is. 3 Sancho power diagnostic systems. Why is that?
So there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the power diagnostic system. They're really versatile modules. They give you extra power grid, they give you extra cap, shield recharge, a bunch of other things. In this particular case, I think that they're needed for the power grid, and they come in really handy for the cap as well. The XL as a shield booster is really cap hungry, so you want to be as close to cap stable as possible. The newts are also cap hungry, so it helps there, and it just makes it fit within your power grid. And also, yeah, bonus shield HP as well.
Okay, I'm just asking because I swapped them out with the flux coils. And if you do that, the fit is stable.
Will it all fit though?
Yeah, it's stable completely.
Okay, well, I don't know. This is, like I said, this is not the fit that I've used in a long time, so maybe there's something wrong with it. But look, that's what they're there for. There's, like I said,
okay,
they're very, very versatile, these ships. You can fit them in many, many different ways, and that may well be a way. Okay, so I might move on to the next bit, which is selecting your hunting grounds. And this is really getting into the crux of hunting. You've got your ship, you know why you're doing it, you know what to expect. Now we're getting into the mechanical skills that you need in order to identify where the radders are, how to land on them, and how to hold tackle. So the first thing that you're going to do now is you're going to open a web browser and you're going to go to ivmaps.dotlan.net, I think it is. Yeah, that's right. So go to ivmaps.dotlan.net and in the search box, search for Declan, the region. And open up Declan. Now, Dotlan is going to be your best friend. If you haven't used this tool before, basically it's a mapping navigation tool for Eve. It duplicates every single map for every single region, and it has a lot of statistics and information that it pulls from the Eve APIs and whatnot. And we're going to be using this every single time you go out hunting, and you're going to be referring to it every couple of seconds. Now, main things as a hunter to know about Dotlan maps is the NPC kills delta, and NPC kills 24 filters. So if you go to the row just on top of the map, the one that says Declan has a bunch of buttons and then some boxes. Go to the box to the second most right and select NPC kills 24, which is the very last option. Anyone not able to get to that screen?
Where are we currently? I'm on the evemaps.lan.net site, and from there on?
So in the search box, just search for Declan, so Deklein, and click search, and it'll bring up the region. And then on the top right, you'll see a few boxes that say search, then something, then Declan with a drop-down menu. And the one in the middle, we want that to select NPC kills 24 hours, which is the very, very last option in the drop-down menu. I've also linked it in Fleet in case anyone can't get to it. So this is a screen that you're going to be very familiar with. Basically what this is showing you is the region of Declan, very, very close to us at the moment, and it's showing you the number of rats that have been killed in the last 24 hours. Now, why is this helpful to a hunter? Obviously, if this is from the 24 hours prior to you going hunting, it's not new information. It's just because there's high numbers here doesn't mean that there's someone ratting in that system right now. But what it does give you is a good bird's eye view of where the pockets are, where people rat. So some things that we can tell already from this map is that there are some systems that we should not target at all, right? So there's not much point us, for example, looking for targets in LEK, in towards the bottom left of the map, in LT-TAC, E3U, EDS2, 5W3, and so on. They have very, very low NPC kill numbers. On the other hand, if you look towards the middle of the map, Triple Z, TAC, STAC-D, JU-TAC, NC-TAC, they have really good numbers and they're all clustered together, so that's definitely somewhere that we want to go. Also, this particular 24-hour period, it's relatively low, but if you look at the pentagram-shaped pocket in the top left, that's generally a good target as well. So, 9,000 NPC kills in some of those systems. And in the pipe towards branch, we can see that that's well orange and red. So that's a very, very hot ratting area. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to go to all of these straight away because we don't know that there's anyone there now, but it gives you a bit of a picture of the region kind of over time. Now, once you get a bit of an idea of the whole region over time, you want to look at what's happened in the last hour. So the same drop-down that we used to select NPC kills 24 hours, we're just now going to select NPC kills. And this tells you the number of NPC, the number of rats that have been killed in the last hour. And this is updated every hour on the hour. So if you're looking at this map such as now at 59 minutes to the hour, this will be relatively out of date, and in about 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the service and whatnot, it's going to give you incredibly fresh information because it's updated, once an hour. Now, some of the systems that we saw before that were really, really hot, they're cold now, right? So UJY TAC at the top, very, very top left, for example, there's barely anyone running there in the last hour, whereas it was the hottest system in the region before. And a system that was relatively cold before, J1A, near that pipe as well, is now heating up, right? So we're getting a bit of a better idea of what's happening in these systems right now. So what are some... What would be your priority if you were hunting in this region? What would be the area that you would go to straight away? Just tell me in Fleet Chat. Yep, J1A definitely. I mean, with that many NPC kills, there's definitely something going on there. It's either a really, really juicy target or a lot of ratters, which is really good. Other people are saying Triple Z area. I agree with that. That's probably where I would go myself. One of the things about J1A is that it's, in order to get to that system, you have to go past a couple of staging systems for the alliances that live in this region. Now, this is not intel that Dotland gives you, but it's intel that you'll pick up as a hunter, and you get more experienced and you hunt in regions, repeatedly. 8S2, for example, is a staging system for one of the major alliances in this region, which means that you can't get to J1A without risking appearing on their intel channels. Same thing with CCP on the other hand, so it's hard to get into Declan without showing up on intel channels, but that's something to bear in mind. The other reason though that I would go towards Triple Z first is that it's warm, it's not super hot, but it's warm, and it's near other systems that are also warm, right? So STAC-D, NC-TAC, eFICO, YZ-TAC, 8.5, they're quite warm, and they're generally warm, so I know that I'm likely to get targets there. But definitely, the J1A region at the moment is looking really, really good. Any questions about that so far? NPC kills 24 and NPC kills in the last hour. Let me just quickly refresh, see if we have fresh info.
I was going to ask, do you have to refresh it in order to see the fresh info, or does the map refresh itself?
You do have to refresh, and unfortunately it hasn't refreshed just yet. Oh, I think it refreshed at 45 minutes past the hour, this hour, so we're not going to get fresh info for a while. Okay, so the third tool that you have at your disposal in Dotland is the NPC Kills Delta. Now, this is a really interesting one. It shows you the difference in NPC kills between the current hour that we're in and the previous hour. So what it tells you is not so much the extent of the ratting that is going on, but the variance in it, or the changes in it. So you can see, for example, that in OVO, towards the bottom left part of the region, someone or a group of people have just started ratting and they're going at it gun-ho, right? So even though overall, if you look at the whole region, it's not one of the hottest systems, it's definitely the one that is ramping up the most. So that's definitely something to have in mind as well. And likewise, we can tell that some of the warmer systems in the middle of the map, like in TXME, CU9, QPO, K5F, and so on, they were not particularly hot before, but now we're definitely not going there, right? Because not only are they not as active as other parts of the region, but also people are leaving, people are logging off, maybe it's not their time zone or whatever, definitely not worth going there. So with all of that info together, we know we have a pretty good picture of what's happening in this region, right? People are definitely ratting in the triple Z area, in those 4 little pockets there. Maybe they're logging in soon, or they're logging in now. Definitely a lot of activity around MZ1, J1A, and also they're starting to log in and start ratting in the OVO, AGG, OTAC2 pocket in the bottom left. So those are your targets, right? If you had 2 hunters, you'd probably go the bottom left pocket in OVO, AGG first, and triple Z, just because that's the fastest that you can get to after hitting their intel channels, and then go towards MZ1 and J1A. If you only had 1, you'd probably make a judgment call, but it gives you a much narrower list of systems that you might go to find targets. Does that kind of make sense? Are there any questions about that? Excellent. So maybe give me a bit of an idea on Fleet Chat, how far ahead you guys are on this. So have you all, maybe X up if you've already used Dotlan for something like this before? Okay, so a lot of you, but not all of you. That's good. Is it anyone's absolutely first time using Dotlan? Just D up in Fleet?
I've got a quick question.
Great, that's a lot of yourself. Yeah, ask ahead, man.
Are there any other types of information that is useful for hunting that we can also view per the hour or by 24 hours? Like, I know in the map you can see pod kills in the past 24 hours in the in-game map. Is there any other useful information other than just ratting NPCs, or?
Yeah, I mean, primarily I use NPC kills, those 3 ones in combination with each other. And look, everything that I say comes with the massive caveat that like hunting is a very personal thing. You'll develop your own system and ways of finding targets. And so use whatever ends up working for you, what gives you results. Another thing that I do definitely use from Dotlan is the sovereignty filter. So it gives you an idea of who owns the SOV in that region, and that definitely matters because you start learning about, different alliances and different corps' ability to escalate, or which ones tend to have bait out, or which ones are going to respond to each other's, like caps getting tackled and things like that. It's not something that you're going to do the first time that you go out hunting, but definitely start to get a sense of who lives where and how they behave differently to each other. So you're definitely going to use that. And that's the main one. Look, I don't really use jumps and pod kills much. Jumps can be helpful just to try to find where like the choke points are in case you're trying to avoid gate camps or whatever, but that's really an edge case. I don't really do that. But look, other people in this fleet might do differently. Is there anyone here that maybe uses other filters or other Dotlan tools to help them hunt?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
What do you think about the in-game tool for that, using statistics on systems on the world map?
Yeah.
Do you think that is equivalent to Dotlan, or should you use Dotlan over that?
I don't think it's equivalent at all. I think that Dotlan is infinitely more useful in that sense. Just by the very nature of Dotlan is not very easily visible, and so you don't see connections between systems. Oh, sorry.
Your mic's giving out.
I get it. Alright, is that better?
Nope.
Oh, fucking hell. Hang on. Alright, how about that? Is that working?
No, it's getting better.
It's getting better? Alright,
Oh, no,
tell
it's good.
me.
No, it's good.
Now it's good?
Yeah, you
okay. Yeah, it's the volume knob that just goes to shit. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, and thanks for letting me know as well. So yeah, basically the in-game map, just by the very nature of its visualization, you can't see what systems connect to each other, let alone easily compare just visually, the number of NPC kills in one system against another, the color system in Dotlan is infinitely superior, and I would say ignore the in-game map for anything but like jump bridges or whatever.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, that's all right. In terms of other information that you might use just in general, though, not Dotland specifically, but other intel, there are heaps, right? So your ability to land on a target increases exponentially with the more information that you have about what that target might be, where they are, and how they behave. The more you can predict about a region or a system, the faster you can make decisions, because you don't have to look for information to validate those predictions. You just once you can confirm that your prediction is right, you just go, and so the faster you are, the more kills you'll get. Some of the things that I do in order to make better predictions about what I'll find in regions is one is searching Z killboard to find out what ships are commonly used to rat in a region, as well as finding out kind of like dumb victims. Like if you see someone in local and their Z kill says that they die in a VNI every second day, I'm going to go for them every time just because it's easy. But ZQL is quite powerful, and a lot of people don't know this, but you can run quite advanced queries, and you can look for specific things. So I'm going to give you a link, for example. Here you go. So this is an advanced query in ZQL that I use quite often. It gives you all the light fighter losses in all the regions nearby to us, right? So Lone Treg, Pureblind, Declan, Fade, etc. Now, it looks like the last one to lose some was Slice to one of us. Great. So we've been killing some fighters somewhere. That's a good sign. Some hunters are out.
This morning local.
Excellent. But you can see, for example, that STAC-D, one of the systems that we were talking about before in Declan, there's carrier ratting going on there, right? So Slice lost two full flights of fighters. I don't know how they managed that, but they lost 2 full flights of fighters, 2 NPCs, so we know that they're ratting. This wasn't PvP. This was a ratting carrier in STAC-D. What that means is that if I see high NPC kills in STAC-D, maybe a really high delta, because a singular carrier logging in and starting ratting can quickly increase NPC kills, I'm going to think that's a system to go to, right? Because I know that they carry a rat there. Likewise with DT TAC, Pureblind Cartel love to rat there. Seems to have lost some carrier ratters maybe there recently. And again, if you go to 1 day ago, STAC-D again losing full flights of fighters to NPCs in that system. So I'm going to go to STAC-D every single time I can. And just like this, you can do queries from ZQL really with really complex kind of scenarios, and it's really, really helpful. You can also look for carrier losses, for example, to find carrier ratting systems. Let me look that one up. There you go. So that shows all carrier losses in those regions, and that starts to give you a really good picture of a region or even like a whole area of space. Another thing that I'll do to capture intel is to use some kind of screen capture software. I use ShareX, and this is to quickly save intel that I have while hunting on things like safe posses, like citadels, capitals that I see that I'm not able to catch, and I refer back to these screen caps either after the hunting session or, at another time when reviewing the results, just to find possible targets in the future. Like if I have screen caps for a carrier in a particular POS, every single time that I jump into a particular system, I'm going to try to set up a trap against them, right? I'm going to, instead of jumping in with the Tengu, I might jump in with Saber. And instead of going in for the anomaly that I think that they're in, I might go straight for the POS. I might set up a bookmark in line, from the POS to the way the anomalies generally are to try to catch them in a bubble, things like that. That kind of intel that you gather over time is invaluable. And screen capture software really helps. And also keeping records of other tidbits of intel that give you a picture of a region. Things like noting down where heavily bubbled gates are, where cyno jammers, cyno beacons are, and signs of a kind of like system fortification. These are things that ratters and crabbers will set up because it makes them feel safe, but that sense of security is something that you can use against them. For example, if you know that there's a system that's bubble fucked, you can assume that they're going to feel safer. So you do exactly what is going to counter those bubbles. You use a nullified hunter, right? Don't use a stealth bomber for that system. They're going to dock up by the time you burn out of the bubbles. Use an interceptor, use a Tengu, so on. So knowing where you're hunting is critical. Any questions about that and about gathering intel, anything like that? Is this something maybe that other people that have hunted before have done? Things that, other things that you guys have done that you want to share for how you've landed on targets, hunted down people?
Bait explorers.
Say again?
Bait explorers.
Baiting explorers. How do you do that?
No, I mean like
can't say I've done that.
You like fly in a Astero to a data site, and then
right.
you have another ship on an alt park right next to them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like that's something that that you can do as well, right? Like say that you're blobs hunting, right? In a Tengu and everyone's fucking docked up in the region, just go AFK 20k away from a gate somewhere. Who knows? Someone might engage you, might think that you're AFK, let your shields get low, then scram them, cyno up, and jump everyone in. Get creative for how you hunt. It doesn't always have to be, jumping to anomalies or whatever. The target here is getting kills more than anything. Kava, you're asking if there's any reference for the advanced killboard queries. Not exactly. There's an API guide that you can get through the main website. You have to play around with it a bit. I might put some info about it in the slides afterwards. Any other questions about intel, about selecting hunting grounds, or anything relating to that?
I watched an old video, so I don't know if it's still current, but he looked on the map for the number of jumps. He then went to the area, set up a drag bubble, not fully understanding what they are, and he then sat off the drag bubble cloaked until ships came past, and then assess whether or not he could take them or not before he chose his fights.
So that's not quite, I wouldn't call that hunting, I'd call that gate camping, right? So one thing that you can do is in high traffic systems where you know that it's a choke point for whatever reason, maybe a regional gate or whatever, and people are warping from one gate to another reliably and repeatedly, then you can set up a bubble behind that gate that will catch them in warp, and then you can kill them. But it's not really active hunting, which is what we're getting to in this, trying to catch people that are running away from you. That's more like a fly trap, trying to catch people that unwittingly land on you. And it takes more than anything patience.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
What's the range on a Black Ops bridge?
It
how far?
It's 7 AU with max skills. I think
8 AU.
8 AU. Yeah, that's right. I just thought that was wrong. Yeah, it's 8 AU.
Yep. Jump drive calibration gets you to 8 AU.
Do you guys mean light years?
Yeah, that's right. Light years. I'm going to cover specifically how to use Dotlan for jump rages towards the end of this as well. But now what I want to do is go over D-scan, unless anyone has any more questions about Intel and Dotlan and things like that. Good. Okay, so this is a part of the training that I want to do actively because I think that the best way to learn how to D-scan is try to essentially hunt GME pocket. We're not going to actually kill anyone, but they're not going to dock up, and so we can practice narrowing down where they are in D-scan, and it's a lot easier to show you how to do and then to get you to do it yourself than for me to explain the technique for how I do it. So let's all get to C4C. If you open up your D-scan windows, which you can do by pressing Alt-D, and I'm going to go over just a bit of the anatomy of the D-scan. So it's changed recently, so I'm still getting used to the new layout, but it's not too dissimilar to what it was before. And also, while you're at it, open your probe scanner as well by selecting Alt-P. Now you're going to have these two windows open essentially all of the time that you're hunting. Now, one crucial thing in your D-scan is your filter. I think most people have this set to like whatever, and it ends up cluttering their D-scan more than is needed. Now, if you click on the filter, you're going to essentially see all of the presets for your overview. Now, I have a ton, you may have a ton as well, or maybe you only have a handful, but essentially they reflect the things that would appear on your overview if you selected that preset. Now, what's some useful things to show in your D-scan? Ships, definitely. You want to know what ships are in space. Some other things that are useful can be wrecks. So, for example, if you jump into a system and there's a ratting ship but no wrecks, that's a bit strange. Maybe that ratting ship is not actually ratting, maybe it's possed up, maybe it just warped to a new anomaly though, so it could actually misguide you. Other things that are useful are posses. So if you, in changing the range and the angle and whatnot, you find that you can only scan down the ratting ship on the same angle and distance as a POS, chances are it's possed up. Chances are it's you're local, warped off the anomaly, and it's safe. Same thing with a citadel, same thing with a station. So they can be really useful things to narrow down what the system looks like once you jump in. Having said all that, I think if you've never hunted before, you're better off with a ships only D-scan to start with, because that extra information can be overwhelming and it can actually detract from your ability to D-scan someone down. You can easily hunt someone down just having ships on your D-scan and the probes scanner open. So start with that and then add things as you find that you could use them. So the first thing that I added after ships was posses, citadels, and stations, just to try to weed out the safe ratting ships and try to be able to quickly target the ones that were still in space. I had then added wrecks to be able to quickly tell, whether there was ratting going on right there, or whether maybe there were wrecks in space but no ratting ships, which meant that I had to go to another anomaly, hub and things like that. So all of that helps, but just adjust it to what works for you. So that's the filter. Any questions about that? Okay, too easy. The next thing is at the bottom, the range and the angle. This is pretty self-explanatory. You change the range slider and it, actually let's do something. Just click on the solar system map button, which is to the left of the filter drop-down menu, and make sure that you've got the show scan cone button on. So now you can see as you move the range slider around, it changes how big the sphere that you're scanning is. So this is pretty self-explanatory, right? If there's something inside of that bubble, when you hit scan, it's going to appear. If it's outside of that bubble, when you hit scan, it's not going to show up. Same thing with the angle, right? So the angle refers to whatever you're looking at with your camera. It's not the direction that you're aligned, it's the direction that your camera is pointing. So set your angle to 60 degrees or 90 degrees or something like that, and move your camera around, and you'll see how the cone moves in the solar system map. And it's the same principle. if you hit scan, whatever's inside of the volume of that cone is going to show up on dscan. Whatever's not in that volume, not going to show up. That's the basic principle of dscan. Is that pretty clear on everybody? Any questions about that at all? Okay, and the basic principles of the probe scanner window also pretty simple, except with one suggestion that I'll make is go to the filtered drop-down menu and select just anomalies. If you're using combat probes to scan ships down, you might want to have ships selected as well, but for 90% of us, we're going to want just the anomalies, and you're going to want to sort by distance, because the combination of that distance and the directional scanner is what's going to allow us to narrow down where the targets are. So at the moment, for example, if you run a full range, full angle scan and you have your probe scanner window open, you'll see that no matter what we see on dscan, it's not ratting ships, because there's no combat anomaly in dscan range of us right now if you're on the C4, C4. So yeah, that pretty much makes sense for everyone, right? I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so let's all jump GME gate and do a bit of a practice of how we might actually narrow down where someone is. So everyone warp yourselves GME and jump through on contact. Relia, you should change the angle and the range depending on what you're trying to do. But as you jump into a system, it should always be max range, max angle, because you do an initial pass of the system when you jump in. Excuse me, when you jump in, although it's super buggy, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does, and you want to get as wide an overview of the system in the region that you jump in instantly. So we're all jumping GME, and we should instantly see a new dscan at full long dscan range off the gate, and you should be seeing VNI, 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 Rattlesnake, right? Vexor, I guess, maybe. That's what should catch your eye. VNIs are very common ratting ships. Rattlesnake is a very common ratting ship. Vexor, not so much, but it could be. And now our task is to try to narrow down where they are. So there are anomalies in range of our dscan. We can tell from the solar map as well as from the probe launcher. There are anomalies at 0.9 AU, 5.7, 6.6, 6.7, 7.0, right? Now, that means that those ratting ships could be there or they could be elsewhere. So the first thing that I would do in this situation is try to narrow down to half of those. So half of those are below 6, half are above 6. So I changed my range in the dscan to 6 right now. Hit scan, and unfortunately we're all decloaked now, so it's going to bugger up our results. But at 6, you can see that there's a Rattlesnake and there's a Vexor. Vexor Navy issue and the Vexor as well. Vexor Navy issue is now 1,000 kilometers from us, so not so relevant. Now the Vexor is still in space, so, and both of the anomalies that are showing up are relatively popular, right? So Forlorn Hub, Forlorn Rally Point could be at either one of those. And the way that you would learn that is by just looking up the different ratings of the anomalies. Hubs are pretty good, rally points are pretty good. The Forlorn versions of them are relatively good to run, so it could be either one. And the Vexor is inside of 6 AU. Which means that it's not at the Haven and it's not at the Forlorn Hub. That's at 6.7 AU, right? So now we narrow it down again. So what's between those two anomalies? Let's say 2 AU. So run a scan at 2 AU and we see that that Vexor disappears, right? The Vexor is no longer on dscan. And if we go back to, let's say, 5.8, and hit scan, it's there again, right? So I have a pretty good confidence that the Vexor is at the Forlorn rally point 5.74 AU away. And that is how you will descan down the vast majority of your targets using the range. A good way to do it is to try to put it in between, like the anomaly range that you're looking at. In this case, we started off with 6, then we went down to 2, then back to 6 to confirm that the Vexor was there, that it was the only anomaly that it could have been at, and at this point we would warp to it. Good range to warp in is around 30k. That's the range that a Vexor or a VNI would be orbiting a rally point in. So let's do that now. So let's all warp to within 30k of that Forlorn rally point and see what's there, and give this poor Vexor like the scare of his life. In before I get purged for doing this. And it's not there. Look, you're not going to land on everything every single time, right? But yeah, this is the idea of how you would do it. I have no idea where that Vexor actually is. You guys should warp yourselves out so you don't get killed by rats. But you understand the principle of it, right? You want to lower your range to isolate individual anomalies and then warp to them at a reasonable range. That's using the range version of descanning someone down with the descan. Any questions about that? Does that not make sense to anybody? All right. That's good. So let's do something else. Let's all warp to the Astra who's called Purge 8QM Gate Astra. I've broadcasted in history, by the way. And we're going to look at another way of trying to use descan to narrow down someone's position. So if you run a full range, full angle, oh geez, that's a lot of VNIs. If you run a full range, full angle scan from this Astra on the 8QMO gate, you'll see that there's a ton of VNIs, the Viator, there's a Noctis, there's everything. This is a hunter's dream, essentially. Now, you can use your range to try to narrow them down. So if you go down to 5 AU, for example, you only have 4 VNIs on scan. In order to reset the distances on your probe scanner, you can either resort by clicking the distance column or just opening and closing it with Alt-P. That'll reset the distances, and you can narrow it down that way again. Another way that you can narrow it down is once you've got them, say the VNIs, right, that you've got at 5 AU range. There's 4 VNIs at 5 AU range, and if we go down to 2 AU, there's only 1 VNI, right? So you want to catch one of the ones that's between 2 and 5. What you might do is actually use the angle to try to see which of those anomalies between 2 and 5 AU the VNIs are at. How you do that is set your angle to about 15 degrees. That's a reasonable angle. Set your range to 5 AU, and if you hit scan, you should either see no scan results or just random mishmash of stuff depending on where your camera is pointing. Now what you want to do is you want to start looking at the different anomalies that are between 2 and 5 AU, right? So one good way to do this that I find is to turn auto tracking on by pressing Shift C, and then aligning to the different anomalies. And once you see the blue line, you just select them in space.
There's a different way.
Yeah, there's a faster way now, isn't there?
You can narrow down your angle to 15 degrees and then hit V and select the anomaly in the probe scanner.
Oh, great. Yeah. That's new, isn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't align the camera. It just does the D-scan on the
Yeah, that's
anomaly,
fantastic.
so don't be confused.
Yeah, this is from the very last patch. They've added the ability to align your camera straight from the probe launcher, which is fantastic. So you can hold down V and click on all the different anomalies between 5 and 2 AU to get a narrow angle D-scan of just that anomaly. And if a Vexor Navy shows up on D-scan, then you know with almost certainty that that's where they are. So let's try a few of them now. So the two havens definitely have VNIs. Mitko, you do it by opening up your probe scanner, so Alt P, and then hold down V and click on the anomalies, right? So hold down V and then click on Serpentis Haven, which is ID JFP, for example. And with 5AU 15-degree scan, you should see a VNI in that Serpentis Haven. Same thing with the next Serpentis Haven, LRZ. The Sanctum also has a VNI. Horde VNI 1 is the name of the ship. I think that anomaly just despawned, actually. The 4-second rally point we know doesn't have any, so we would skip that one, and so on, right?
And there's a stiletto in the first haven in JFP.
Is that, that's me. I think that's one of us, I think. So are there any questions about that way of doing it?
Why, when I hold down V and click on an object, does it start giving me a buzzing noise? After I click on something?
Yeah, that's the D-scanning noise.
D-scan.
That's the what?
The D-scan
Directional
noise.
scanner.
Well, that's I know the directional scan noise kind of sounds like a submarine noise, but then there's a buzzing, like I shouldn't be doing something after I hold down V.
I've no idea. I turn off all sound in Eve, so no clue.
Should the camera angle change on the screen?
No, it doesn't, but it still scans the anomaly.
But is it working for everybody using the V-click method and having a narrow angle to find the running ships?
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Good. Now, one question that I think is really important in Fleet Chat is, aren't we at a huge disadvantage if we don't have the cloak to stay in a safe spot? Now, here's a crucial point of hunting, right? This method is not something that you do once you warp out and you cloak up and you're in a safe spot. This is what you're doing like in the first 30 seconds of jumping into a system. So we're going to do a bit of practice in a minute, but you're going to get this down pat to be able to quickly go through an entire system's worth of anomalies, at least the ones that are near to the gate that you jump in from, in under a minute. Definitely under a minute, which is your cloak timer, but more like 30 seconds. I know it sounds crazy, but not only is it doable, it's kind of the only way to do it. You have, I would say, 30 seconds to a minute to narrow down where that raiding ship is and land on it. If you take longer than a minute, unless it's massive mangoes in that system, I would just go to the next one, then go to the next system. Any questions about D-scan at all? Nope.
Is there a way to filter fleet members out of the D-scan, or is that just not possible?
Nope.
Nah, you can't filter stuff out of D-scan, unfortunately. That would be way too OP.
Can you, when I click on filtering the PvP button, it shows me buildings as well. Is there a way to filter out the building?
Depends on the tab presets that you have for your overview. So if you use Z-Tax S, which is what I use, you'll have a ships only filter, which you can use, and that'll literally just give you ships.
Nice, thank you.
Unless you like start customizing them, right? So like if you add things to your overviews, it'll reflect in the dscan filters as well. Excellent. All right. So look, that is your primary tool for hunting, right? So you jump into a system. If there's ratting ships on dscan from the gate that you land in, you start narrowing them down straight away. If there's nothing on dscan range of your gate, you warp to a random haven or sanctum or forsaken hub that is out of your dscan range, and then start mashing dscan. Even before you land from warp, you start narrowing down the range using the angles and things like that. You do not waste a second. That's dscan hunting. The other way that you can hunt is using combat probes. Now, unfortunately, I did not prepare for a practice session on this, but I'm gonna cover it with images in the slides, and I'm gonna go over the theory with you guys really quickly now. Does anyone not know how probes work? Has anyone not tried probing before? Just takes up in fleet. Okay, just two, so that's okay. Most of you are somewhat familiar, at least, with the probe mechanics. Now, I'm not going to go over exactly how to move the probes in the solar system map or anything like that. I'm going to assume that you can just watch the tutorial for that. I'm going to more just narrow down on how to specifically combat probe for hunting. Now, what's one reason that you guys can think of why you might want to not combat probe?
Combat probes or probes in general are shown on the overview if you have it configured like that.
Not on their overview, but on their dscan. But yes, that's the gist of it. The main problem with combat probes is that if a ratter is smart, they're going to be mashing dscan all the time, and as soon as they see combat probes, they know that they have to warp out, right? There is no reason why there should be a Newton local and combat probes in system other than they're about to get dropped. There are, on the other hand, situations in which that ratter might have no problem with you being in local, right? Maybe they're not in a pocket, maybe they're in a pipe, and so they're used to people jumping through it. Maybe you're in a prospect or in an inti, and they think that you're not a big threat, but for whatever reason, they might stay in space. Whereas combat probes make it very clear why you're there and that they need to get the fuck out. It also broadcasts what you're doing to them from far away, right? They don't need to descan you, they just need to descan your probes. On the other hand, there's some benefits to combat probes. So, for example, now I'm getting my numbers wrong, but a 4 AU, no, that was right. So an 8 AU scan will catch a carrier every single time, unless you have super shitty skills. But as a rule, you can assume that if you run a combat probe at an 8 AU range and there's a carrier anywhere inside of that, you're going to get 100% hit every single time. Which means that if you jump into a system that's really large, you're not in range of the ratting ships, and you're pretty certain that there's a carrier there, or you're 100% certain for whatever reason, you might well want to launch probes, start aligning to the cluster of anomalies that you can see in the solar system map, and just hit warp as soon as that signature hits 100%. It's going to broadcast your intention, but it might also be the quickest way for you to get to that ship. The other situation in which I might use combat probes is if there are many different anomaly clusters. So in this system, for example, if you look at the MPPA solar system map, you'll see that there's a big cluster near the sun. There's another big cluster near, what is that, planet 5? And there's another smaller cluster around planet, what is that, planet 6. Now, I probably wouldn't do it in this case because the two main clusters are close to each other. They're within D-scan range of each other. But say that there were 4 or 5 clusters and they were very far away and they were all similar sizes, it's going to take me much, much longer to warp to each other and D-scan them down than if I hit 2 birds with 1 stone and launch probes scanning one specific cluster while I warp to another one. And so the one that I'm not combat probing, I'm descanning and vice versa. And you can cut down the number of clusters that you have to check by doing that. Yeah, does that kind of make sense? Any questions about that? Yeah, Pinger, I totally agree with you. If you're hunting something fat, there's nothing like combat probes. So, Dret is that a question?
Oh, no, I was just saying it does make sense.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to go with combat probing. And that gets us to almost the end of our lesson, which is God Mammoth. That's been 2 hours now. Any questions in general about the ships that we'll be using, about .lan, about D-scan, or about combat probing?
Yes, I have a question. What ships to look out for the most?
In our regions, like Declan, Fade, Pureblind, Cloudring, you're going to be looking for VNIs, you're going to be looking for Ishtars, rattlesnakes, and any kind of carrier. So it could be a Thanatos, Nidhogger, a Chimera, or a, what's the other one? An Archon, although they're rarer. And also, sorry, I should also mention, those are ratting ships, right? But you're also looking out for all kinds of mining and related ships. So Noctis, what do you call them? Machinors, Hulks, Skiffs, Procurers, Retrievers, Covetors, all of those, as well as Orcas. I mean, Rorquals as well, I guess, but you need a lot of infrastructure behind you in order to hunt Rorquals. So I don't think that your average guy just hunting on a roam is going to be able to go after a Rorq.
Do you know if that 8 AU probe range can scan down an orc instantly, like you can a carrier?
I don't think it can. Yeah, I don't think it can.
You need 2 AU. You need 2 AU.
2 AU?
I tried it myself. I got combat probed sometimes in Morocco, and they always need 2 AU.
So is that just one probe, or do you need like a cluster of probes on them, by the way?
Cluster, yeah.
Okay.
Always cluster. Pinpoint formation.
So like every time I got probed, they probed me at 4 AU, and at 4 AU wasn't enough. Obviously, they repositioned them in the instant I walked out. So normally when you see combat probes on D-scan as an Orca, you have enough time to warp out because the repositioning of the combat probes takes some seconds, and yeah.
Right.
Okay, well in that case I'm just very quickly going to cover blops hunting, specifically covert sinos, and I might just get a bit of an idea of how many of you are actually interested in this. So if you're thinking of at some point training Sino 5 and becoming a blops hunter, just see up in the fleet for me, please. Oh, that is a sight to see. I'm so happy that you guys want to do that. Blops hunting is fantastic. It's so much fun, and it is nerve-wracking. So good though. Like some of the stories that I could tell you about, you know, funnily enough, the good stories are the ones where you fail, right? Because it builds up so much tension, and then you miss something by 2 seconds or something. But it's so much fun, and it really frees you up to engage a lot more things that you normally would in an inti or whatever, just because you're much more survivable. right? If you're able to immediately jump in your entire fleet once you tackle a carrier, your survivability, goes through the roof. Whereas if you have to hold a carrier for 2 or 3 minutes while your fleet burns to you from 5 jumps away, likelihood is you're going to die. So yeah, your engagement profile just opens up a lot. So we're going to go over just the basics of Blops hunting. Now, the 2 main things that you need is a ship that is able to fit a covert cloak, and you need Sino 5. So Sinusoidal Field Theory, I think it's called, 5, which is a very long train, which is a shame because it limits a lot of people to not be able to Blops hunt, but it's super interesting kind of hunting, and I recommend it to all of you. Now, let's say that you've got those skills and you want to become a Blops hunter. There's a few changes to what you want to do and a few special things that you need to know. So the first thing is about Dotlan. So if you go back to our map of Declan, right, in Dotlan, let's move now to C4C. So let's just click on the C4C system in the Declan map, and you'll now be looking at the map of Fade with C4C highlighted. Is everyone there? Anyone not following me? Anyone need a link or something like that? Now, the one of the limiting factors of Blops is the range of the bridge, right? So like we said before, the range of a Blops bridge is 8 LY, so 8 light years, which is not a distance in number of jumps, but a distance in physical space between the systems. So if you look at your in-game map, for example, not your solar system map, but your normal, galaxy map, you'll see that systems are at specific distances from each other, right? And they vary widely. Sometimes they'll be super, super close to each other. Sometimes they'll be miles away, even though there's a gate between them. It's the actual physical distance that the jump bridge uses, not gates. So we can't use the normal gate system to tell what our hunting grounds are. We need to create a new map. The way that we do that is you right click on C4C in Dotlan, you go down the drop down menu to jump range, then to Black Ops, and then click on all systems. And that'll give you a new page. Are you all with me so far?
Yep.
Good, good. So you'll see a new map. Looks very different to the other one. It's not as useful just yet. You'll see a new map that says Declan, Fade, Pure Blind with a lot of red systems. Then below that, you'll see jump range maps. Yeah. So let's click on Declan. So jump range maps, Declan. You should be looking at the same map that we were looking at before, but with a bunch of systems highlighted, right? So same map as before, and you can use the same filters, right? So you can use NPC kills, you can use NPC kills delta, NPC 24, but it highlights specific systems. Those are the only systems that you can jump to directly from C4C. Yeah, so that's your hunting grounds. If you wanted to hunt, for example, in J1A, right, which we saw before was super hot and super juicy, or MZ1, we would have to move the whole fleet to a new staging and then start hunting again, just because of the range that you can jump. Now, in that window, I want you to select NPC kills 24 hours. And notice something interesting. Notice what the hottest part of the region is. It's also the part that's outside of our Blops range, right? Now that's not for nothing. It's a lot safer to rat in UJY, UEJ, CZD, A4L, because we can't immediately jump to those systems. We would have to stage the entire fleet somewhere in Declan and then jump from there. So they know that and they take advantage of it. They rat the most in the regions that we can't hit with Blops, right? But that gives you the hunting grounds, and you can do that for any system. Like if you say that you wanted to hunt from WUZ, you just right click it, jump range, Black Ops, all systems, and say that you wanted to hunt us, so you click fade. That gives you your hunting grounds in fade, which is all of the GME pocket, right? So they can blops into our entire rating pocket from WUZ. Does that all make sense? Any questions about that?
Just assuring max skills.
Yeah, so that's assuming jump calibration 5. I'm not going to get too much into the jump calibration stuff because this isn't for people that have blops bridges necessarily, just for the hunting side of things. If your blops bridge doesn't have jump calibration 5, they'll tell you, unless they're massive retards, in which case you should tell me and I'll kick them. Any other questions about the range map or anything to do with dotland range? Jump range? Okay. The only other consideration, especially for plops hunting, has to do with your ability to light a cyno, right? Now, there's two major things to do with that. The first one is, like I said before, you can't light a cyno if you're going faster than 500 meters per second. So you have to actually land tackle and almost stop your ship and then light. And the other one is that you remain in place, immovable, for a full minute once you light your cyno. So you need to have a long point because it's all too easy for your target to coast out of your scram range and warp out if you only have a short point. Webs also help a lot, but definitely anything that keeps them in range of your tackle until everyone manages to jump in and get secondary. I can't really think anything just yet that I've missed about covert cynos. Can anyone think of anything that I haven't covered about covert cynos, or anyone have any questions about it maybe? Okay, cool.
The only thing I could add would be that they use considerably less liquid ozone.
Yeah, so you only need 25 liquid ozone instead of 250 with full skills, but more likely to be 300, 350, which allows you to stay in hostile space for a lot longer because you don't have to restock on your liquid ozone. Oh, another thing is why hunt with a covert cyno when you can use a normal cyno with blobs anyway? There's really, really good reasons why you want a covert cyno, even though it's a long train. Number one is the shorter cycle time. You're only locked on grid for 1 minute instead of 10 minutes. The other reason is, like we said, the liquid ozone. You can stay in space for a lot longer without having to restock liquid ozone. And the third one, and probably the most important one maybe, is that you can't warp to the cyno from anywhere in system. If you've seen a cyno, which I'm sure you guys have, it gets broadcast to the whole system in the overview, and anyone can warp to it if it's a normal cyno. Covert cynos only appear in the grid in which they're lit, so it's a lot harder for response fleets to get to you and things like that. As well as covert cynos can be lit in cyno-jammed systems. So there's a POS module which is called a cyno system jammer or whatever, and essentially prevents normal cynos from being lit. They're generally used to protect carrier ratters and rorquals and things like that. We've used them in the GME pocket recently. But covert cynos bypass that. So you can get to people that think that they're relatively safe by using blobs. All right, any questions about blops hunting specifically? In that case, I'm just going to go over some quick tips, tricks, and traps that we can use. And then we're going to wrap it up because I'm pretty tired and I'm losing my voice, I think. The first thing that I might give you a bit of an idea on is to think about how to avoid bait. So one thing that you're going to run into relatively quickly as you hunt is people that deliberately set out to be caught, right? So they'll be in an overtanked ship, or they'll be in a normal ship, but they'll put a Cyno in it that they jump in the response fleet, or they'll be PvP fit in a PvE looking ship, and they'll just engage you themselves and try to kill the tackle. But there's many times when you'll land on something that you think is vulnerable when they were baiting you into it. Now, there's a few things to try to avoid that. One is a ship scanner, for example, you saw in my Tengu feed already. If you use that module on something that you've got locked, it'll give you the modules that they've got fitted. So it'll give you a bit of an idea of what they intend to do, right? If you're in a VNI ratting and you have a Cyno and a Scram and a Web and a Point, I question what your intention really is, right? And I might not light the Cyno and jump the full Blops bridge to you if I see all of those PvP modules, because you're clearly up to no good.
So can I ask about that?
Yeah, of course.
What's the range of that ship scanner?
I think it's pretty long,
Like how-
but you're always going to be really close to them. The thing about the ship scanner is that it won't give you every module every time. It's probability based, so it'll show you some modules, and it'll show you. It's more likely to show you more modules the closer you are to the ship.
Right.
Yeah, so
And
it can be a bit tricky.
is that a pretty fast process? The ship
Yeah,
scan?
it's nearly instantaneous. The range is around 50k, so 50, 55, depends on the module. And as you can
Does it
see,
show
it
you the
has a
cargo
fall
hold?
off. It does not. There is a specific module for that, which is a cargo scanner, which has no chance of failure. That one gives you the entire cargo hold every single time. You can also use that one, but it won't show you PvP fits. It'll only show you if there's liquid ozone as something to look out for, which can obviously be a sign that it's Cyno fit and therefore bait.
Right.
Yeah. So any questions about ship scanner or cargo scanner? Does that kind of make sense to people?
Yeah. So would using your D-scan to look for rats, that's probably another good way to look for bait, right? Like if there are no rat racks around them, they're probably just sitting there
Yeah,
waiting.
definitely. I hadn't thought of it that way. But yeah, that might be a good sign. Like if there's this VNI in space and there's no NPC kills in that system and there's no Rex anywhere, then what's the VNI doing? Having said that though, like I'm gonna engage that VNI 9 times out of 10 because I mean why not, right?
Sure.
All right. Another thing that you can do to avoid bait is, of course, run a local scan of your system. There's a few tools to do this. I'm not going to go over the details of each one, but you can Google Pirate's Little Helper. There's a website version of it that you can use. There's also a software version of it. We also have a PL local scanner, which won't give you much information, but it'll tell you at least what corp and alliance people are in. And of course, a very, very useful thing to do if you have the time, which you often don't, is to look up whatever you're intending to tackle on Zkill. If they have a bunch of kills of, Blops ships and, PvP fleets in ratting ships, that's a bit of a sign that they're baiting. Or if they have a ton of losses with Cynos fitted and things like that, like those are signs that they're baiting. But look, don't worry too much about getting baited. It happens very rarely, and when you do, it's not that bad anyway. Just try not to whelp other people's expensive shit and you'll be fine. And the last thing that I'll cover is thinking about some creative ways to use bubbles. So bubbles are super powerful to catch bigger targets, but also DED runners. So you can't light Cynos in DED sites or any sites that have a gate in them, any dead space sites. And so you essentially have to flush them out of their site and catch them somewhere else in the system. And a useful way to do that is to try to set set traps for them. So if you see a Tengu, for example, running a site, and you see that there's no station, no POS, no citadel in system, you might want to set up some drag bubbles on the gates and then enter the site that they're running, try to flush them out, and hope that they warp to one of the gates directly where you can then catch them in the bubble. Likewise with carriers will very often warp to POSes, to safe POSes instead of a station or a citadel. And this is where your intel comes in really handy. If you see a carrier consistently warp to the same POS every time that you jump into the system, what you might want to do the third or the fourth time that you are jumping into them is jump a Saber in as well, and at the same time as you're warping to them, the Saber is warping to the POS and setting a bubble there, so that if you can't catch them in their anomaly, you hopefully catch them in the bubble when they're in warp to the POS. Things like that. Think of creative ways that you can use bubbles to catch people that are more elusive. It has really good results for the craftier ratters. Any questions about that as well? Okay, well look, that pretty much concludes it from the stuff that I had prepared for it, but it's completely open now for you guys to ask any questions or make any comments or talk about anything to do with hunting, specific tips for maybe things that you've found you need help with or you've had trouble with. Just floor is completely open, guys.
I missed some of this. Where is it going to be recorded and saved at?
So it's going to be on Flightschool, which is a module of Horde Square.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the op board in the forum.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I might actually just stop the recording now because it's getting really long.